We've got Judith Sloan now with us. Judith, the 200,000 announced by the Prime Minister starting next week, how much of that is a real worker need and how much of it is economic growth?
Well, these are current visa holders, right? So these are not the issuing of new visas. So they will be overwhelmingly international students because that's just the way the numbers are. There will be some skilled worker visa holders who will also come in, but overwhelmingly they will be students, and students essentially fill gaps in the unskilled and semi-skilled part of the labour market.
Okay, and that's where we know we've got the big sort of need for businesses trying to open again. What will it do to wages, do you think?
Well, I mean, I think the fear is that the incipient wage pressures, which we are seeing, will be muted. And that is, I think, a risk the government takes. I mean, to be blunt, I think this is a very political decision because they want the sugar hit, which will come in the short term from bringing the workers in. It will appease what I think has been a very sort of aggressive campaign by the business community to bring back workers. And I guess that is the coalition's constituency. But, you know, they'll be looking at this quarter's GDP figures, next quarter's GDP figures leading up to the election. So I'm not sure they're really concerned about the policy implications, which we've talked about before, Peter, which is that if you rely so heavily on immigration, both as a source of population growth as well as filling gaps in the labour market, employers are not inclined to train their own, and they're not inclined to bid up wages when they have worker shortages. So I think it's very disappointing. I think they're going to try and kind of portray this as responsible economic management, but I do feel they could have taken another tack.
Yeah, can I just underscore the point Judith's making there too, because we know there's pent-up demand. People want to shop, they want to go to restaurants, and if they bring all of the students in, which is Judith's point there, basically that's what the bulk of them will be, all of that demand gets released. People spend in January, February, March. The March quarter looks very, very healthy, and of course we know the government's looking at going to the polls within a month or so with that quarter landing. So what should they have done differently, do you think, Judith?
Well, I mean, it would have been nice for them to take a more systemic view of this and decide that we basically want to grow our own as much as possible and to have a reliance on them at the margin on these immigrant groups. But I can't see them doing that. And it's interesting how the Labor Party is pretty mute on this too, because you would have thought with their constituencies, with the workers who in many ways compete for the jobs that these migrant workers will take and whose wage aspirations might be thwarted to a degree, you might think they take a slightly different view, but they seemingly don't. So I think it's a pity that what's going to happen is that the students will probably come in quite quickly. They won't actually be coming in to study at the moment because the semester is basically finished and we're not going to recommence for some time. But Alex Hawke, who's the Immigration Minister, did this extraordinary change in the regulations, which means that there are no limits on the work rights of international students at the moment. There used to be, 20 hours a week. That does not apply at the moment. So, I mean, I guess the point is that the demand for services, so going out, pubs, all that sort of thing, was very much subdued because of the restrictions, and there is a lot of pent-up demand. So, you can see how the government is thinking. But, it would be nice, perhaps even in the course of the election campaign, to have a bit of a debate about this, because while there may be benefits from immigration, there are also costs. And I think the community needs to have a greater say in what kind of immigration program and what size of immigration program we have.
Well, spot on. I've got to leave it there, Judith Sloan. But we talked about this, didn't we, in the pandemic? We hoped there would be a national conversation when we had this really rare opportunity to have things on hold. not so, but the politics at play, if the kids can't even get to university, well, we know what they're coming back for. Thank you for your time.
It's a pleasure, Peter.
There you go, tells you to look at the detail of regulations, doesn't it?